Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for another great equipping and enabling training on how to share the gospel with Native Americans. My name is Allie Carr. I've had the privilege of serving at International Commission for 4 years, and I am the host for International Commission's E&E trainings. International Commission is dedicated to equipping and enabling believers of the gospel of Jesus Christ worldwide. And we do this by partnering with local churches in evangelism to share his gospel with unbelievers and make disciples. We send teams all over the world on short-term trips to partner with churches, and we just go out and share the gospel, which is the good news of Jesus Christ. We want everyone to know who Jesus Christ is and how they can have a relationship with him. And we do this in simple yet strategic ways by using simple gospel sharing tools, which over the last 50 years of our ministry has allowed us to partner with churches and share the gospel with millions of people across the globe. We also equip and enable Indigenous churches all over the world to share the gospel in their own area without the assistance of a team coming, which cuts costs, it eliminates language and cultural barriers, it allows more people to be reached in more countries throughout the year. The purpose of these E&E trainings is to equip and enable you to grow in confidence, to share the gospel and make disciples with a variety of people in all nations using different applicable gospel sharing tools that are contextual to those people. Everything we do is filtered through the mission of the Great Commission. We just found in Matthew 28:18 through 20 that Jesus gave to his disciples back then, but still applies to us today as his disciples. So thanks for joining us tonight as we focus on how to share the gospel with Native Americans. Now, most of you are probably joining from someplace around the US, whether from California to Virginia or somewhere in between. What we know about Native Americans in the United States is that there are 331 million people living in the US. And of those, 4 million identify as Native American Indians. So there's a chance that you might have a family member, you might have a neighbor, maybe a close friend who is Native American Indian. In fact, there's 574 recognized Indian tribes in the US. And while most are located in Alaska, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, they're really located all across the US. So this is a really important topic since so many people are Native Americans that live amongst us. We want to know how we can honor their culture while also sharing the good news of Jesus in an applicable, contextual, respectable way with them. And tonight I have joining me in presenting on this topic, how to share with Native Americans, is someone whom I don't think could be any more qualified to speak on this topic. From personal experience being Native American himself, but also who has worked in ministry for many, many years to reach Native Americans with the love of Jesus while still encouraging them to live within their cultures and traditions. Dr. Casey Church is a Pokagon Band Potawatomi member from Southwest Michigan. He is of the Bear clan from his mother's side and the Crane clan from his father's side. Casey and his wife, Laura, who is from the Navajo tribe, have lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the past 18 years. After Casey and Laura got married, they wanted to have children and raise them to know their identity in both their Navajo and Potawatomi cultures. So Casey's parents and his extended family taught them the Potawatomi traditions of raising children. Casey and Laura have now raised 5 children, including 4 girls and 1 boy within their traditional Native cultures. Casey's journey led him to study traditional spiritual teachings under his Anishinaabe elders and investigated culturally appropriate approaches to Native evangelism and ministry at Fuller Theological Seminary. In the late 1990s, Casey and Laura pastored a Native church plant in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was one of the very first Native American contextualized congregations in the country. Dr. Church holds a Bachelor of Science degree in anthropology, a Master of Arts in Intercultural Studies, and a Doctorate of Intercultural Stories from Fuller Theological Seminary. Over the years, he has had extensive experience in various leadership roles with different Indigenous ministries, serving as staff, board member, writer, and workshop presenter. He has also published 2 books, both on the contextualization of Native American rituals in ministry. Dr. Church is currently an adjunct instructor at Portland Seminary, teaching classes in Native American spirituality and spiritual formation. He's also the pastor of a ministry called Good Medicine Way, which exists to build an intertribal community among the Native American residents of Albuquerque and the surrounding area to give them a place to live out those relationships while growing closer to each other and the Creator, Jesus Christ. Welcome, Dr. Church. I'm so pleased that you could join us this evening. And given not just from your professional experience, but from personal experience, your upbringing and the upbringing of your family, this topic is something that you are fully invested and passionate about. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us on how to share the gospel with Native Americans.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ellie. Yes, I'm qualified. I've just lived my Christian life as a Native American ever since my parents introduced me to Jesus Christ long ago when I was young. And it might be kind of odd, but I have never had a come to Jesus experience because I was raised to know that there was a Jesus and that he died for me from the very young age. And it wasn't until 1988 that I accepted a call to minister for this Jesus who died for me. And that's been a long haul now. There's over some 30 some years now. But I just want to make a disclaimer right off the bat here is that what I'm going to share with you, for some, it's going to be very new information, and some is going to be very shocking information because it might really challenge some of the basic ways of church planting and sharing the gospel that you might not have heard. So I hope that you were willing to be stretched a little bit. I already told her that I was going to stretch them in this talk. And I'm very kind of well prepared for this because just over the last month, I've given this talk 3 different times. And this past Monday on our program called Good Medicine Way that is aired on Monday nights. And so you can even hear a little bit more if you want to go on and view some of those archived programs on our Facebook Live and also on our YouTube channel. So with that, one thing I just want to share is that tracts and sermons and sometimes sharing the gospel on the street or with people, with Native American people, is not the most effective way to reach them and share the gospel. The most effective way to reach them is with relationship, because there has been many what you call reconciliation services that have happened across the country. And I believe in the 1990s, there were many of them where people were trying to really get back and say, hey, we need to make some things differently now and treat people differently. And we need to have a reconciliation service. But with me, just the term reconciliation, it implies with it that at one time there was good relations. And with the Native American people, there have hardly ever been good relations with the settler, we'll call it settler populations that moved into North America and spread across the country there. So reconciliation is the wrong term to use. It needs to be building new relationships, and that part of what I teach when I been a popular topic right now is decolonizing the way we do ministry. And we really need to understand that everything that we're doing as Christians in our faith and our churches right now is a colonized form of doing ministry. And you have been colonized in this. Because if we track through church history, we'll know that even when the Jewish people, took over the land of the Canaanites, they colonized them. They took land, displaced people, killed, moved them out of their area, and took over their land. That was one of the first colonizing ways that's in the Bible that we can note of our own Christian history of how that affected the Christian history that we teach and that we know. So decolonizing that way, I'll go in later on in the talk here is how we're doing some of that. But one thing you need to know about Native Americans, because Ali said that there's some folks say that they live close to a reservation and that we're not sure how we can minister to them. But a lot of times people don't know these statistics. Is that out of the 100% of the native population in the United States, 75% of them live in the urban settings. And the reason for that is in the late 40s and early 50s, there was a relocation program to relocate Native Americans off the reservation into the cities, basically so that the government didn't have to take care of them anymore, because they were wards of the state and wards of government. And when they were put on the reservations, the government and your tax money had to take care of them. And that was eating up a lot of money at the time. And so they basically wanted to move them from that location into the cities, and made it possible for them by giving them a stipend, helping them move, and relocating them. So thousands and thousands of Native Americans in the different tribes were relocated again, because they were relocated once. We know the stories of the Trail of Tears and the stories of the Potawatomi, whose story was called the Trail of Death, who moved us to Kansas. Now we're being moved again from the reservations back into the city. So 75% live in the urban settings, and 25% live on the reservations that we have. So noting that, so if you're wanting to minister to the reservations to reach the Native American people, you're reaching the minority of the Native American population that has been overly evangelized, so much so that they're numb. And they're spreading the gospel there and doing vacation Bible schools. They're very, admirable, but they have just lost their impact over the years. There's not enough relationship building. Like I said, relationship is the key to evangelizing the Native American people. Got to remember that key point. If you don't have a friend, if you don't have connections, if you're not ministering to already, you're already behind the curve. So one thing we got to, she introduced that there are over 574 different federally recognized tribes in North America, or I would say in the United States, not including those in Canada, and we're even talking to the Native Americans who are in South, Central, and South America. We're up upwards of the thousands of tribes that exist on these two continents. So we're only talking about the 574 that are federally recognized in the United States. That includes 250 different languages. So there's a lot of federally recognized tribes. That means that the tribe has had connection with them through treaties or from signings or from relocations. So there's been relationship building. But in that relationship, there's been trauma. You can just think back in your mind of the different things that Native Americans have gone through. There's been atrocities, boarding schools. And if you study it as much as I have, the approach to taking the North American continent has been genocidal and is committed by secular and Christian people, settlers. I avoid saying white because not everybody's pure white. we all have a different shade of color, and I know a lot of people that came from the Mediterranean area is dark as many of the Native Americans in this country. So atrocities and boarding schools, all of that it's a hindrance to spreading the gospel, because many of them don't want to have any association with Christianity at all because it hasn't been a good relationship. So when people say, well, I want to share the good news with you, there has been no good news from the Christian teachings among Native Americans. So how do you share good news? Good news for us when we do our ministry here is that it's bringing back what was taken away. So if you want to minister to Native people, what was taken away? Our language, our ways of life, our community life, our teachings. Like my wife and I raised our children in cradle boards. And that's one thing to check out. It's something that I do quite a bit now, is people are very interested in how to get back to cradle board raising. And it was very looked down upon because they could not see that it was very healthy for the Native people. And because it looked like we were tying our children up. And what it was best for them is because we were nomadic, it was a way of carrying our children uh, that day than it is today and carrying them in our car seats and strollers. So that's how it had to do, but it was looked down upon. But decolonizing the church, you got to recognize that like the church is not a good place for Native people. So it's been some time ago now, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, statistic was spread by Dr. Richard Twist that only 5% of Native American people have a relationship with the church or Christianity. That makes 95% of the Native people in North America here are an unreached people group. So we are one of the biggest mission fields in the world right on our doorstep. So when we have really failed in that way of reaching the people here. There are many reasons for that, and I can't go into so many of them, but decolonizing the way that we do Christian ministry. So one of the things is that when the Native people were relocated to different areas across the country, they were put on reservations and by the government mostly, and soldiers at gunpoint and relocated and said that this was going to be the only land that they could be on. Then the denominations came along, and then through a thing called comity, they each denomination sectioned off. So let's just take Oklahoma. So the people up in the northeast coast or northwest section, they all became Baptists, and those over on the other side became Methodists, and those down here became Catholic, and those over here became some other denomination. So then they're Presbyterians and Lutherans and all of that. They're all segregated that way, and they didn't become, let's say, they didn't become Lutheran because they believe in the Lutheran way. They became Lutherans because those were the only ministers that were allowed to be in that section of the country. So that's the way they grew up, and that's the way they believe now. So the Baptists the same way. So that Baptists had their section, and that's the only thing that they could teach. And no other, there couldn't be any proselytizing. You couldn't cross the border and bring Baptists over to be Methodists, anything of that. There was a lot of rules and regulations by the Indian agents at the time that really controlled things. But cultural ways of doing ministry are one of the key things that I'm finding is bringing back what was taken away. So we were given the white ways, we were given the white teachings, we were given the white schools, we were given the white educational process, we were given the white community life that we had to live by, but those are all different than the native ways. So when we go back and we bring those native ways back to the people, here's the big point about that, is that bringing cultural ways and traditional ways back to the native people is healing for the people. Taking them away from them has been disastrous. So bringing those things back to the native people is healing. And I'm involved in a couple different programs on healing and trauma across the country, and then helping them work out these ways. So that is a big point. So bringing in the cultural ways, the church, here's where we get into some things that might really, scratch you the wrong way, is that the church that I was just at here 2 weeks ago, I preached 2 Sundays, and I really challenged them with a message of that we got to be different to reach the natives in your community. So the 10 people that are in this church, a church that's been there for 100 years, and there's only 10 Native American people, or I should say 5, and the other ones are white, that are attending this church, it hasn't been very good. And this is common across Native American churches across the country, is they're very small congregations. And like the rest of the churches across the country, they are shrinking as well. As we know, our Christendom and Christianity in the United States we're hemorrhaging like crazy, and we're losing ground fast, because a lot of it has to do is that we're not changing the ways that we need to reach out to the people. We're kind of stuck in the traditions of our ancestors, as the Bible says. You're not willing to take on different ways of doing things. So one thing about doing ministry to Native Americans that has always happened is that in the area I was at, they wanted to build relations. So they said to them, well, if you build a foundation, we'll come in and we'll help you build the structure above it. But what structure did they build? They built the same structure that was in the town down the road, the church planting agency. So they built a structure that looked just like the church down the road. So the white Western square building with a steeple and a bell and a cross, that's what they transplanted onto the reservation. Even though the Native American people, in their own religious ways, would not meet in a square building with pews facing forward with a pulpit and an organ. They would sit in a circle, the way they've always taught their religious ways. So the pews, the pulpit, the organ, the piano, all of those things are very foreign to Native American people. But that was the only way that was done to introduce Jesus Christ to them. So, with comity and the different sections, they brought in their style of church. They didn't look at the culture at all to see, okay, as we know in prevenient grace, God is everywhere. God didn't land on a North American continent when Columbus set foot in the Bahamas. No, God has always been with people all around the world, and we know that because of the time of Babel. Babel, God seen what was happening there, and He put us intentionally in all corners of the world, and He and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, because it says, "Let us, confuse their languages." So when they put us in these different areas, they gave us different languages. So did they expect us to learn English again in order to become Christians? No, that's what was propagated to us and told us how we had to do it. No, but God can be known from every culture around the world. However, they begin to express Him, as the Jewish people did. The Jewish people didn't express us the way we do Christianity today. It's very different. But that was a cultural people that was given a language and a place in the world. All the people around the world were given that same kind of place in the world and an understanding that there is a God that needs to be worshipped. So, but it looks differently. If I had time, and like I do when I teach my classes, is I go through, like I was going to get to later here, is that I trace Christian history from the time that Abraham left Ur. So when Abraham left Ur, he didn't say, oh my gosh, I need a Bible, I need pews, I need a pulpit, I need a bell, I need a square building, I need all of that in order to be, to share the gospel around the world. No, he didn't. When he left Ur the Chaldees, he probably prayed exactly like he prayed in Ur, but only now his direction and his allegiance now is to God Most High and not to small g God. I would say that the pagan way of understanding God. So he now knows who has called him out, and he prays to God Most High. So that is the distinction there. But then as we move from Ur of the Chaldees and Abraham, as he traveled the route that he did, and the Hebrew people, then crossing the Egypt, and crossing the Sinai back to Jerusalem, and then the gospel spreading through Asia Minor, and then into Greece, and then on into Europe. The cultural practices of the people, the pagan people, were adapted and kind of infiltrated the way that we did missions. And we know and we understand this really so much so because the Jewish people didn't have a Christmas tree, okay, and the Jewish people did not celebrate Easter before they crossed the Aegean Sea and went into Greece, right? Didn't happen. So cultural influences became part of our Christian expression over time, and they have become legitimate expressions of our Christian faith. So when you say Christmas, it's saying that this is the time that we're celebrating Christ's birth, right? Yeah. And when we say Easter, a word that you cannot find in the Bible, that is also an expression of our Christian faith, and only it came from a pagan word. The only place that you can find the word Easter is in a pagan ritual Bible, even though it's alluded to in our scriptures that they ministered in the goddess Astara and different pagan rituals of fertility, those kind of things. But Easter, the way we see Easter is not in the Bible. Even the word Bible is not in the Bible. Another thing that we need to understand about spreading the gospel. Like I said, relationship is the biggest thing. And another thing that has really caused a lot, when I do church planting, I do it this way, is that everyone is a minister, right? Everybody believes that, right? We're all called to be a minister of the gospel, right? But are we all called to be seminary trained clergy? But that's what the church says, is only the ones that can preach to us are the ones seminary trained clergy that has created us clergy laity divide. That is not in the Bible. That was added as the gospel came and started with the philosophers and the Areopagus when Paul went there. The philosophers became Christians, and then they slowly developed the way of spreading the gospel. And what do philosophers like to do? They like to philosophize. They like to hear themselves talk. And a lot of pastors are the same way. And that's why they get the master's and doctor of philosophy and ministry, so that they can preach to us. But it's not in the Bible, the clergy laity divide. But leadership is in the Bible, and having servanthoods and being picked by different folks to be in ministry. So those kind of things need to, I'll just take it another direction here. So doing ministry, the way we do ministry here in Albuquerque, when we share the gospel, is we do it in a cultural way. We have adapted the language as much as we can, but because of the multitude of languages and tribes that are out there, you can't speak in, I can't speak in every language that would have to spread the gospel. But English is so common now that you can spread the gospel among almost every tribe in the country. So I've devoted our time to spreading the gospel and using a vernacular of wording that I'll share a little bit, and Ali will also share with you, is the First Nations Version Bible. Now, some people say, no, you can't do that. You can't write in a vernacular of the people of the day because it's not 1611 King James. But you know that the 1611 King James was written for the people of the time and day that it was written. They spoke the Queen's English, these and thous and all that kind of wording. But this version of the Bible, I endorse it with Terry Wildman, the editor of this, and it's with InterVarsity Press, but it speaks in the vernacular, in the heartfelt meaning of the word to Native American people. But it's not meant to use as a scholarly way of understanding the Bible, that you really need to go to the Greek and Hebrew texts. So this is a way of expressing the thought for thought of the Bible to a Native American person so that they can grasp it. And if you were just to read one section of it, like I'll just read one little section of it here. And the names that are in here, some people are really criticized this, is that they use the interpretive name of the biblical character. So Paul would be called a certain name, and James and John would be called the names that their names meant. And that's really helpful for the Native American people, because like my name, Ali didn't share it there, I don't think I put it in there, but my name is Anaqua Nonea. That means hole in the clouds. So if my name was to be in the Bible, it would be Anaqua Nonea, and then in parentheses it would say Casey, so that you would learn to know that that name is who I am. So it's very easy to read, and pretty soon you just start reading the interpreted name rather than the in parentheses name. But it speaks in the heart language of the Native American people, and that's one thing. It's probably one of the best resources you can have right now. If you were to order this and have this with you when you go to evangelize Native peoples, taking that person to coffee, helping them out. Let's say you know that they don't have enough food for the week. What do we do? What does the Bible say? If someone needs your shirt, you give them your shirt. If someone needs a bag of groceries, you give them a bag of groceries. If you have more than you have, then you share that with someone else. That's a Native way as well. If people know that.
Dr. Church, can I ask you something?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you read a passage out of that Bible? Many people are familiar with John 3:16, so I think that would be interesting to hear in that translation?
Yeah, just give me a second. And it is, there's two different, there's a soft cover and then there's a hard cover. And what our ministry has been able to do is we've been able to have people donate boxes of this Bible in soft cover, and we're able to give that out to all the Native people that we meet. And we give it to them free because it was donated to us free. But when we do have some, this is the hardcover edition. We asked non-native people to purchase it at a little bit discounted price. We tell them that if you purchase it, that money will go back in so that we can buy even more Bibles to distribute again. John 3:16, here we go. The Great Spirit loves this world of human beings so deeply, he gave us his Son, the only Son who fully represents him. All who trust in him and his way will not come to a bad end, but will have the life of the world to come that never fades away, full of beauty and harmony. Creator did not send his Son to divide against the people of this world, to decide against the people of this world, but to set them free from the worthiness way of the world. So it really brings across the same thing that John 3:16 says, but when we start using a great spirit, when we in our language there, and one thing about this here, my oldest daughter is part of the translation team. We raised her to know her culture, raised her to know both her Navajo and Potawatomi culture. So she lives in these two worlds. She knows most all the ceremonies that we do. So when she was asked to be a part of this translation team with Wycliffe Associates in Book One, she was able to bring in that view of Scripture that she lives out. And we did attend church for some time, but that church wasn't feeding us because it was come from a white Western perspective. So when we started doing churches in a Native perspective, that was meeting a need that she could do. So my oldest daughter, Sean Dean Church, has been part of this program of translating this Bible into a vernacular of the Native people. And she's also been invited to Africa to work with 3 other tribes in creating a vernacular for those tribes in another country. But she turned down going to India because she was in the midst of she just received her master's from University of Michigan in social work. So I encourage you, this is one of the best ways to build relationship and to share the gospel with Native people. Because you could tell, hey, when you got questions, let's read it together. I'll just say a little bit about the way we do our Good Medicine Way. We've been doing it now for 5 years, and it's a new church plant in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We started out as a little fledgling group of volunteers, and I had a dream to start this that I did in 1996, the same vision that I had to start a church in 1996, where we opened the doors and 80 people came. 55 of them had Native background. So we ended up with a group of about 60 for the next 4 years, and I pastored that. And that was an experimental time for us to incorporate aspects of our culture as authentic expressions of our Christian faith, rather than adapting and putting and transplanting other people's cultural ways of understanding the gospel that didn't quite fit with us. So as we took the time to pick and choose things that we could use in our service, like sitting in a circle, the only time you see most people sitting in a circle is in an AA meeting, right? Yeah. But it's not because there's a lot of natives in alcoholism, but that's another true thing too. And we don't even get into that world, because why are they having alcohol problems? Because of the trauma, the atrocity, all the things that have taken away their world and life. So we're dealing with a lot of that. And so men do not have a place in the world anymore because they're not the leaders of their community anymore. So there's all of that to be a part of it. I know so much about that because I helped start a contextual alcohol treatment program that went from a 17% success rate 20 at the beginning to a 75% success rate after 10 years. So it is one of the best ways for alcohol treatment among Native American men to do this program that we designed. And the information is out there if you want to start a program, but it's run by two white couples, so it can be learned too.
Wow, that's great.
So the way we do ministry, we the order of worship. Now this is a sacred cow for every church across the country. Your pews, your pulpit, your stained glass windows, your door, your bell, all of that are sacred cows. And to say we're going to take away one of those, you might as well just leave because you already created tension and hostility already. But you say, well, if we continue doing it this way, there's a thing called insanity, that if you do something over and over and over the same way and expect a different result, that you're insane. So if you want to reach Native American people with the same box you want to give them, then you're going to expect the same negative results, the low results, and people come. But if you expand yourself out of that box and then open up your ways to doing ministry in a more cultural, contextual way that is part of their world rather than different than their world, you're more likely to make better ways. So the order of worship that we took, and I think everybody knows that the Baptists and the Methodists didn't create this order of worship. It's an order of worship that came from 500 years ago when the Catholic Church developed an order of worship. And all the Protestants did is take that order of worship and tweak it a little bit to meet their specific denominational needs. So, but it's old and it's fulfilled a lot of good things through the years. But we changed it to be more sensitive to the Native people. So just to name a few of the things that we changed it to, because you know your order of worship, it's something you do every week, ad infinitum, all the time. So when we first come on, we do a welcome. We do a prayer in language, if someone knows the language. We always do a land recognition. So even on your program now, you could say, because everyone knows no matter where you are, you're on stolen land. Yeah, you're where you are because white privilege. You're there because the land wasn't yours. You didn't. Most of you didn't pay for it. It was your ancestors' took it away from the Native Americans during land settlement and the Oklahoma land rush and all that kind of thing. It was given to them. You just settle it for 14 months and then you get to have it or something like that. But it was stolen from the Native Americans and we were located somewhere else. So it recognized the land of the traditional people where you were. And then from there, we go on to a song, and our songs have a native flavor to it. So if there's a drum beat into it, that's okay, because I tell people that there is no Christian music, and some people get shocked. I said, "Oh, sure there is. Go for 1,000 tongues to sing. I'll fly away. All of those are Christian songs." I says, "No, they have Christian lyrics to music. So that there is no Christian music. There is only Christian lyrics." So, yeah. So if I was to clap my hands in a certain rhythm, I could sing "Jesus loved me, this I know." Yeah. But if I was to do that same thing on a drum, Yahweh, 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 oh. Yeah. And those are only vocables. And understanding vocables too, you understand that because in Christmas time you sing a song that has something like this into it. It says, fa la 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 la, down we now are gay apparel. Fa la la. What in the world does fa la la mean? Yeah, so vocables are just something that Native Americans do as well in our music. So we do music. Our offering is called a giveaway. Then our announcements are called smoke signals. Yeah, kind of cute, kind of a way to say it. It's better than saying we're going to announcement time, we're going to take our offering. But we use the terminology that touches their world. It means something different. And then we do a thing called in creation insights, because the Bible tells us that we're without excuse to know that there is a creator by what he has created in Romans. So creation insights, how did God speak to you this week? So we look for a volunteer to talk about how God spoke to them in the rippling of water, the blowing of wind through a pine tree, the just seeing nature, the walking of two animals together, something like that. You know that there's a creator by what he's created. Those are just a couple of things. And then we go into reading the scripture and reread the scripture from the First Nations version. We'll have an introduction of the speaker that's going to be on. And because we really try to put away the clergy system where, because this is one of my beliefs, is that I have listened to thousands of sermons, literally thousands of sermons, and never got to ask one single question of that sermon. So every time we meet, we introduce our speaker. The speaker speaks for 30 to 40 minutes, and then we have another 30 to 40 minutes, and sometimes longer, to ask questions about that topic that person talked about. That's where spiritual growth happens. Jesus might have, did five or half a dozen sermons in the Bible, but he spent 3 years with the 12. Do you think he just talked about those 6 sermons over and over and over and over again? No, he probably talked about how you need to take the gospel to the world, and I'm going to give you power, and you're going to go into a city, and you're not going to take your cloak. You're going to go in there. You're going to take anything with you. You're going to take my message with you and go to that city. And they probably had 100 questions. So they asked Jesus 100 questions, and they grew in their faithfulness. They grew in their knowledge of him and how to be Christ-like because of question and answer, question and response. So that's part of our program there. We always, the clergy system, like I said, sermons don't change lives, relationship changes lives. So the last thing we do is that we have a closing song, and then we go on and we have a sending off, a prayer by one of our people. And you got to realize that this is new. It's post-COVID, kind of like that. We're on the tail end of COVID, hopefully. But we have a small group of people. We have a 72-inch screen that can put 30 people on that you can recognize their faces. You got to put them in a nice box. So we have this big screen over to the side. They're part of our congregation. It's because we put the TV as part of our circle. So they're there, and then our music people and me. So we have the big monitor there. We have another monitor on the floor that controls the video, the sound system, the microphones. And then he's got a monitor that controls other speakers, our techie. His wife has a computer next to her that she's on at the same time, where we're doing Facebook Live chatting, that people are asking questions and responding. I have a computer in front of me so that I can follow on what they're doing. And when I do a message, then I can speak right here. But we have a speaker come on, and we use a multitude of people in my network. As I tell you, I teach with NATES. It's an Indigenous learning community, fully accredited by the Association of Theological Schools. I have 24 professors that I can call on to give us messages from a Native perspective, Indigenous perspective, and then we get to ask that questions about that. So every one of our people are growing in their spirituality. We're not sitting in the pew soaking and waiting to. Some of us are dozing off and sleeping, but it's the church is such a tradition to us that some people wonder, why do I go here? I'm really not getting fed, but I listen to this because of tradition. But if they really want to grow, need to venture out of that box and look at another way of doing ministry. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Church. That was all just great information. I'm just trying to process everything that I'm personally learning. I'm sure the people watching this are also thinking about all the new things they've learned about Native Americans. A few things that I loved what you shared was, and this is what we share on our E&E trainings often, is contextualizing the gospel. That is so, so important because we're supposed to bring the gospel to the nations, and the nations is made up of billions of people that perceive the world and each other and family and God differently. And so we want to respect them by meeting them where they are with the good news. And so I also like what you said about the good news for Native Americans is bringing back what was taken away. I thought that was really powerful and a very interesting point. So thanks for sharing that. But yeah, contextualizing even church. I had no idea how Native Americans worshiped in their church context. And so that was eye-opening to me. Two things I want to just bring back is you said 75% of Native Americans live in urban settings in the United States, and only 25% live in reservations. That was new information to me because I thought, oh, most, if not all, Native Americans, they live on a reservation somewhere. I live in Texas. I know of reservations near me in Oklahoma, in New Mexico, but to learn that really the smaller majority live on reservations, the rest live in our communities.
Yes.
So the ones that live in urban settings, let me ask you, do they happen to live with each other in community, or are they just kind of spread out really everywhere?
Yeah, they blend and they're hidden. They're a hidden population that, because of, except for out here in the Southwest, you really can see the skin tone and the dark hair and the dark eyes of the hundreds and hundreds of the Native people here. But if you were to see members of my tribe in Michigan, you would pass for one of our Native people
Mm.
because the blonde hair, the different colored eyes it's been changed because the Native people in our area have married into Hispanic, white,
Mm.
Asian, and Black. And there's some many tribal members look more Black than you would think of, quote, a Native person. But it's
Mm-hmm.
really a little story. We took our children up to my tribe to my son was going to play a lacrosse game with the local people there. So all my daughters, my four daughters, were sitting on a picnic table watching, and one of the tribal members, who almost looked like you, come walking by and looked at each one as she walked by. And and when she got to the end, my daughter Shondine, who's the oldest, was there. She said to my daughter, she says, "You guys you're like legit." And she goes, "What did you say?" Almost defensive, like, "What did you say?" And she said, "You guys you're legit because you all look Native." And they
Mm.
do. They got long black hair, dark eyes, and darker skin. So, but my own tribal members don't look like my family because we live in the Southwest, and I married a Navajo, and she's
Mm-hmm.
dark complected and long black hair. And myself, my heritage is my father is half Potawatomi and white, and his
Mm.
his ancestors came from Pennsylvania, more of a Mennonite background, and and my mom is full blood Potawatomi.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wanted to ask about the community aspect because sometimes you can recognize different peoples and nations because they all live together in a specific community, but others just kind of live on their own. So that's good to know because the 25% of the reservation, as you said, have been overly reached. We really need to be more aware of our surroundings because we could have Native Americans living in our neighborhood, literally in our neighborhood and in our community, and we just have never thought to notice or known how to notice them. So I'm really glad that you brought that up because those are the people that we really want to build those relationships with. And as you said, relationships are key.
And there are ways to find them. There are some many bigger cities have Native American centers.
Yeah, can you share more about that? Maybe what the centers are called or maybe some key cities where those are located?
Yeah, the same like Denver has a Native American center where Native people can come for training, for doing resumes. They can come there to sign up for assistance, just like a regular social service agency, but it's more geared towards a Native population.
Mm-hmm.
In Albuquerque, we have the same thing. but it was specifically for Native American people. But about 10 years ago, they switched over to a program where they incorporated all people. So we lost control of that. So there'll be agencies like that. There'll be Native people. Chicago has them. LA has them. Um, Denver, Albuquerque. When you get on a little east here, then you get into big cities like Dallas. There's
Mhm.
big populations in the north, um, like New York area, and the Haudenosaunee people, the Seneca, and that. And then down south in the Carolinas, there's big groups there. A lot of them in the Carolinas are very Christianized already, but they're very colonial Christianized. Yeah, so
Mhm.
there's a lot of not native traditions in their service. They're basically white Western churches to Native people. So
Mhm.
that's happening. But I would search if you want to attend like a gathering. Many of the cities have powwows, and you can Google powwows in your city. You can, I think it's called the Powwow Network. You can find local powwows in your region, and most all of them are welcoming to all kinds of people. They're open to the public, basically because there people come with craft vendors still making some of the native crafts. So all people are welcome in to help. If you buy something, my sister, even though she's native, she makes it a point because a lot of elders sell crafts. She makes it a point to buy one thing from every elder in the in those vendors because a lot of
Mhm.
times that's helping to uh, because they're also on Social Security, so they
Mhm.
also helps them with their budgeting as well. So there's many ways, and like I was saying, my information is going to be on there, and the program that we do on Monday nights is it's becoming one of the best ways to learn about Native ministries across North America. If you
Mhm.
don't know about contextual ministry, you'll hear it. You'll hear about many expressions of it too, from missionaries, from theologians, from practitioners, to social workers, and just a multitude of people that we bring on, Native pastors and female pastors, male pastors, and that share with us.
How can people get a hold of you, either personally or what is the website that people can go to, the Good Medicine Way Ministry?
Yes, just Google Good Medicine Way, and it'll come up with website page. But my email, I don't. It's nothing, uh, you top secret about it. It's lchurch111 at comcast.net, and my phone number is 505. That's New Mexico, uh, 350 1390. So that information will be there too. I put it out there because I'm ready to take information from people who are really like, this is exactly what I need to hear, and so then I get the hate mail as well. Again, you're totally wrong, Mr. Church. The white Western way is the only way to do it. I get that too. And
Mm.
so then it gives me a chance to help them see the world in a little bit different way. But I do take hate mail as well a lot of times.
Well, Jesus did say, "Don't be surprised if the world hates you because of me." So
Yeah,
if you're getting attacked and you're getting those hate
yeah,
messages, it probably means that you're doing something right.
that's right.
So
That's what we go by. All right, I'll flash a couple of books there that you can just, and then I'll put another picture inside. This is the cover of a book called Holy Smoke. This
mhm.
particular one's in Spanish, and then this one is in French, and then the other most popular seller is the English version. This is the first book I wrote. This is how to really understand why I go this way and do this kind of ministry. It's called Native American Contextual Ministry, Making the Transition. A couple of good books that are out there that you can read. Our ministry is starting this book club. Everyone is welcome, and you can go through that, and you can hear my as I relate to the how ministry goes.
Mhm.
There's a if you if you really want to challenge yourself, read the Pagan Christianity, Frank Viola and George Barna.
Wow,
Yeah, goes
that sounds
into
interesting.
kind of a hitting the tops of all of the things that we do in our church really don't have their roots in the Bible. They were all cultural expressions that were adapted over time. So it's really challenging for some. Some people really, my students really like it. It really opens their eyes to say, yes, we got to see the world in other cultural perspectives.
Absolutely. I bet that would be challenging, but great. So thanks for sharing those resources with us, Dr. Church. Thank you so much for your time and all the information you shared. It was truly invaluable, and I know that it will help a lot of people who are watching this training now and hopefully open their eyes and their hearts to people around them who may be Native American. So thank you again. If you want to connect with our ministry, International Commission, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at International Commission. Since you're watching here on YouTube, if you haven't already, you can hit that subscribe button and you'll receive notifications when we have a new training or a new video so you don't miss anything. You can visit our website, internationalcommission.org. There you can find all of our past E&E trainings and other resources on how to share the gospel. We have trainings on how to share with Mormons, with Muslims, with Hindus, and so much more. So if this topic tonight really intrigued you and you enjoyed it, head on over to our website, and we just have a lot of other trainings and ways to share the gospel, contextualize the gospel for different types of people. In 2 more weeks, we have our next training on March 23rd, and that is evangelism through storytelling. And so our special guests will be teaching you different ways that you can tell the stories that are found in the Bible in order to reach people, because people love a good story. I loved when Dr. Church shared stories about his church and his family. And so we're all very fascinated with stories. So you don't want to miss that coming up in 2 weeks. Thank you again, Dr. Church, for sharing with us. And if you don't mind, I'd like to close us out in prayer.
Very good.
God, thank you again for another day of life and this opportunity to be equipped and enabled. Lord, I pray that myself and others watching this right now, that you would highlight Native Americans to us who might be living amongst us that we've just never noticed before, whether it's our coworkers, our neighbors, people at our local grocery store or bank or gym. Lord, open our eyes to those people. I pray that we would have compassion and love for them because you love them. And it's important to build relationships with people that are different from us, to learn and to just live life together. So thank you for this time. I pray that you would bless every person on this training. And I pray that they would have a desire to share the gospel and make disciples wherever they are. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.